In the corporate world, there is a saying, if you are not at the table, you are on the menu. For HR leaders, that table has historically been out of reach. HR has been seen as a support function, not a strategic one. And this is sad. They are there to execute on company priorities, not to shape them. But in a world where talent is the ultimate competitive advantage, that paradigm is shifting fast. Today's HR leaders are expected to be business leaders first, fluent in strategy, technology, and the language of growth. They are expected not just to have a seat at the table, but to earn it with the same commercial acumen and analytical rigor as their peers in finance, marketing, and operations. This is a lot that we are asking to human resources. My guest today has not just earned that seat, she has redefined what it means to occupy it. Tami Rosen has led human resources at some of the world's most influential companies, including Apple, Goldman Sachs, Atlassian, Luminar Technologies, and Pagaya. In this conversation, we dive into the new skills and mindsets human resources leaders need to thrive in a tech-driven, fast-paced business environment. We talk about the stereotype of the soft skills HR leader and what needs to change in how the function develops talent. And we explore what it really means for human resources to shape company strategy, not just support it. If you are a human resources leader looking to up your game, or a business leader wondering what a strategic human resources looks like, this episode is totally for you. Tammy, welcome to the Growth Hacking Culture podcast.
Thank you for having me today.
I have so many things to discuss with you. I was mentioning to you that back in the days, there was the perception that human resources was there to do administration. Anything that was not that the other functions didn't want to manage, it was dumped on them. And suddenly, before COVID, somewhere in that area, there was the dumping of culture. And how can you create culture in or drive the culture in a company when you don't have the time anymore because you have so many things that have been dumped into your table, and that was a crazy time. I have seen during the COVID times human resources stepping up the game to be closer to people, voicing. It was amazing during that time that in LinkedIn you were hearing so many human resources is finally speaking up on behalf of these employees that they are supposed to take care of, right? Did you feel that the COVID was the breaking moment where human resources had to step up?
Absolutely. I think COVID gave an opportunity because for the first time, humans were at the focus of whether a company was going to be able to operate. You know, you realized very quickly that if you can't convene your people or get your people working, you don't have a company. So it put human resources right at the spotlight where you had to manage not only health and wellness, but then productivity and efficiency.
And that's the topic of today, this productivity and efficiency. So we have been adding stuff into the table of human resources. God knows that there has been a little bit of reshaping on the systems, the approaches, the processes to manage human resources. But now today, the expectations are that capabilities for human resources leaders that weren't there back in the days need to be in on the table. And what is your take on that? If we compare 10, 15 years ago on what were the expectations of these capabilities for human resources, how has it changed until now? What are the demands? What are people craving and asking to HR?
Well, I think the conversation has shifted from earning a seat at the table to helping shape the table itself now, if we're being honest. And that's because human resources leaders need to be across so many different things. It's not just like you mentioned, the administrative or the processes. It's also understanding the culture and the people and the organization and where you work, whether it's in an office, not in an office, you have to deal with, whether it's wartime or peacetime in the world and how you're dealing with where your people are and can they actually effectively work. You're dealing with the AI transformation and how you're integrating technology and people. So the human resources role has been completely elevated to being the strategist that's really helping to drive business strategy going forward. And if you are not seeing HR leaders in that regard, you're going to be left behind as a company.
Let's be a little bit more visual about how does it look like when in fact you are the one who said people strategy is business strategy. How
Yes.
does it actually look like in a high performing companies when these human resources is shaping the table?
Yeah, so it really starts with having intentional culture and creating a clear decision-making framework in the company on how things get done, and then designing that org structure that's going to be sort of the highways that get that work done with the right velocity. And then ultimately, the bottom line is how do you take the people processes that we know and love and use those to amplify all of the above? Companies that I call like superhuman companies are ones that know that they have to be intentional about it. And whether it's a crisis that they're dealing with or a new paradigm or AI, they are ready. They're ready because they already have this in place. And I'm currently writing a book called Superhuman Companies, which really details this very thing that you're asking, that people strategy is your business strategy. And superhuman companies, in my mind, will stand the test of time if they are intentional about their people strategy and they would understand that the pillars I just mentioned of having an intentional culture, clear decision making framework, a org structure that gives you the right velocity, and then those people processes that amplify it, those will be the ones that stand the test of time and are successful, whether it's COVID, as you mentioned, or a war, or it's the AI revolution. And that'll be a good litmus test for companies to look at this to see if their management teams and their CEOs are, as they turn over, and they do over time, over a long history of a company, if they do, but the company still stays successful and still is able to operate as if anybody can lead it.
Mm. I love the title, by the way, Superhuman
Oh, thank
Companies.
you.
That's amazing. That resonates with me. Now, this person in human resources, traditionally we have picked human resources people who are studying psychology because we say this is the time we need people who are able to connect with people. When in reality, the reality is that every leader needs to be able to connect with people. Shouldn't be delegated to human resources. And on
Yes.
top, we created a monster saying, so they're good with people, but under the stress that human resources have been for years because of the amount of shit that we have pushed to the table, you cannot be empathetic when you are overstressed, right, Tammy? I don't know. I cannot. I lose it. So should we hire a different type of people? Not anymore this nice psychologist who wants to help people at work, but something else.
Well, I feel like that's a very deliberate stereotype of all HR leaders because ironically, I'm an HR leader and I don't have a psychology background. In fact, I probably have a pre-law background, but it was not by design that I became an HR leader. And when I talked to a lot of my colleagues, most of them didn't start out as HR leaders. They started out as something else and then shifted into the HR function. For sure, there are many that do come out of the, organizational psych space, but and that should not be frowned upon because I think both is necessary. I think having well-rounded people going into HR that really understand the imperative of being commercially mindset and also people mindset together is powerful. And I think the shift that you're seeing is that we need to be thinking about all types of people that want to take on what I call the people strategist role because it is a strategist. You are sitting with a leadership team and you are helping to make key decisions across every business line and goal. And you need to be seeped in so many different things. You can't just be an org psych person or you can't just be a business major. You have to be someone who can vacillate across many different things. And that's why I think, you know, today, even with AI, you'll see that the liberal arts degree is really going to be the best degree for HR leaders and also for most workers in the future because it gives you that ability to show judgment, empathy, qualitative, quantitative skills, everything. You have sort of the gamut.
If you had like this magic wand, you have mentioned already a couple of characteristic of this future HR leader, but if you had this magic wand, what would be your pick in terms of technical skills and competencies that these HR leaders that are ready, future proven, and who are able to drive these superhuman companies? What what would you pick?
Well, that's a hard one because I do think that, you're kind of pushing me into a corner. If you're going to push me in a corner, I guess the way I would say it is that I think HR leaders need to have, or people strategists, as I've called them, need to have a combination of both business acumen and also, the softer skills, as you might say. But I think there's a combination of being very quantitative is very important, but also understanding how to interpret those results and how to then take that into being more operational. So I think it's a combination of those three things: being operational, being technical, and then also having a business acumen. Honestly, every business problem eventually becomes a people problem at scale. So for HR leaders or even leadership teams, they have to understand that the future has to have people that understand all sides of that equation.
Mm, I love that. Now, technology has been in the mouth of everybody since 1 year and a half, maybe. People have started panicking and they suddenly noticed that in the ranking of functions in an organization where technology was highly used, uh, maybe finance and human resources, the support functions, by the way, were the ones who were not using technology as much as they could. And it becomes clear that technology fluency has become a priority. How can we accelerate the movement of human resources to be more tech savvy? Not like I'm the one who is coding, because today nobody needs to code anymore. I'm all fart like me is able to go and do my coding on my own when I need. So as AI is reshaping work, what do you think are underestimating? What are we underestimating at most about the human side of the transformation? So how are we doing with these two things? Transformation, technology savviness. What do we need to do in human resources in order to craft, redesign the role?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take this in a different direction. I think you have to start with having a learning culture. And I think the HR leaders need to model this as well. And what I mean by a learning culture is one that's not just, hey, I'm gonna go learn facts and then spit it out. It's how you're taking that learning and you're adapting to that next problem, and that you're introspective enough to know when you failed and be able to learn from that failure, and when you succeeded and why you succeeded, so that you could actually replicate that. So if you're creating that culture in your company of learning, and the HR leaders and the executive teams are working in that way, you're going to be okay with showing failures. We're not going to be successful in the future if we don't allow small failures to happen. So we have to create that culture of learning and an ability to recover from those small failures. We always hear in Silicon Valley, move fast and break things. I think that
Mhm.
that sometimes works, but I also think it's an opportunity to share that you can make mistakes and start over and do it better. So the technical fluency that you're talking about is that you don't need to code, because there's tools to help you do that, but you need to know how to or where to go for it. And look at it almost like when you were in high school or college and you got an open book test, you were like, wow, this is amazing. I don't have to study. In fact, you did, because if you took the open book test, you would lose so quickly because you'd waste so much time trying to find the answers. So now in this world, you have to be fluent enough to know where the answers are or how to get them.
You know what? Let's be sincere. Partially, the judgments that were negative about human resources came also from the ignorance from the business side about what is the job that they are doing and how the impact of this human connection has on business. And even now, Tammy, it is very difficult to explain to a business leader what it takes, like when everybody is overworking and having continuous stress, that has an impact on productivity. Do we need to teach these guys what is human psychology?
It's always good for people to understand the other side and to get empathy, right? But at the same token, I think most people, when they think about HR, thought it's like, just send it to HR. They're going to fix it. They're going to be the policy cops. They're going to be the ones that are going to, solve the problem because it's too messy. I can't do it. It's not black and white. Send it to them. And that's kind of where this kind of stereotype came to, like, right? Like the idea that HR is going to enforce, because I as a leader, maybe I don't want to have to enforce. So we'll send to HR to enforce. And now I think we all have to enforce, because when you're going to start managing agents as well as people, you have to understand how that all works together. and you're going to have to be a lot more thoughtful. So having our leaders learn to be more empathetic, share judgment, use their creativity differently, as well as also have the technical skills will be a winning combination, frankly.
How do we, because you have said it, and this is a topic that I love, this story about that we, in the near future, and we are not talking 10 years from now, but maybe 2, 3 years from now, we are going to be managing real humans and agents. How does HR get ready for that? One, to understand what is an agent, because I have the impression that we are turning around 20% of the HR people who knows what it is, and to manage it. How do
Yeah.
we start preparing?
The funniest part about this is as quickly as you learn something in AI, you have to relearn. So the idea of preparing almost makes me chuckle because in traditional HR form, we're like, oh, let's create a program, let's create a training class, let's create opportunities for people to learn, right? But the second we all know that those never really worked unless people use those skills immediately after. They would take away 5% of that class, and hopefully if their manager or others wanted that kind of thinking, they would actually leverage it and it would be great. I mean, obviously this is different than if you're learning to code. There's a black and white in a class and you could do that. But in this case, you really have to have sort of learning agility, and you have to be able to constantly be able to think and rethink and to examine and question and be able to take those learnings and then apply them differently and experiment. So I don't think there's a lot you could prepare other than teaching the ability to fail and be okay with failing, and as that as your biggest learning opportunity, because typically when we succeed, we don't really look at it like why I succeeded. Most people will be like, yeah, that was because I was great. No, maybe you were lucky. So maybe you have to look back and say, why did I succeed? So I go back to failures are your best learning because we're willing to open our eyes to why we failed and then change. So the most important thing to be ready is to teach a mindset of change and being willing to change and learn and relearn.
So, let me translate it in my provocative way of looking at the world. So, what you're saying is that what it worked back in the days when I started working in beginning of the 2000s. Wow, that was a long time ago.
I started way
These,
before that.
these trainings of 3 days, that doesn't work at all, not only for AI, but we are talking about all the skills that we want from human resources and from the leadership team, these human skills. Well, we cannot learn them with a consultant who comes for 3 days. As you said, it has to be tested, validated. There needs to be these iterations that you have in the amazing world of startups, where people has to be able to fail and take some data. There is no way that you can give them instructions like do this tiramisu in that way. No, it doesn't work like that. It's like you will have 1 million options of tiramisu, but you will find the one that is fitting your bloody taste. So that's what we are saying is that training has to be redesigned for AI, because you have 10 million ways to learn. What you learn today is not going to be the same as tomorrow. Today, I got the email from Anthropic saying, we have a new version of your training, co-work, so go and do it again. But then I have to do it again because I will not do the full training, but I will do that specific area that changed from 1 month ago that I did it.
Yeah, and you're going to get fatigued on that. I actually think a better model is really to go back to the apprenticeship model and really pair people together who have experience in the business and understand the context and whatever with junior people who really are very tech forward and digital natives. And together, the creativity and the judgment and the experience will be much better. I think if you're trying to do training programs on how to create an agent, that's okay, but if you're doing on how you're going to implement this into your business model and how you're going to make it successful and how you're going to work collectively, I think the apprenticeship model will work much better.
You know that this is a model that works fantastic. I have a friend. I was the first one to start with vibe coding like maybe 1 year and a half ago. He's 63.
Wow.
We were sharing what we were learning because I told him that is so exciting to be able to do what I wanted in my head. This guy, as soon as he learned the starting point, he could develop things that I could never imagine that I can do, and it's hard for to catch up. So what it means is that the experience have created a lot of ideas that you couldn't realize it. But as soon as there is this ignition of how to just to make the jump or break the fear that you have to, because it's a new tool. It's amazing what we can get from people with more experience than the young guy who had tech background and all that stuff, and he knows how to do it, but he doesn't have all these use cases that the experienced people can make.
I totally agree. And, I just wrote an article that was posted last week in Fast Company about this because too many companies are so focused on getting rid of their junior talent right now because of efficiencies. And they're missing the point that this is the talent you need to be grooming because if they come in and they don't understand the business and they don't understand the context, how are they going to be successful? And then you're losing this gap in your organization. But if you pair them with more senior people, more tenured people, and you have these digital natives, imagine what the magic will happen and how you'll
Mm.
be able to have much more successful operations and efficiency and even more competitiveness. So I really think companies have to stop thinking about AI as the efficiency measure and thinking about it as how are you going to really develop your company, be more competitive using it by marrying the old with the new and really doubling down on apprenticeship.
It has worked for hundreds of years, this companionship, and I have the impression during the 80s we lost it. And it was
Agree.
everybody on his own, working in silos and all that stuff. And it is time to get back to some basics. People of older age value the fact that they have a legacy to others, transmit what they have lived through, and they are also hungry for to learn. And these younger guys need to have these competencies of business acumen that the older have acquired.
Yeah, you can't just rely on the old data to give you the information. I was talking to this analyst at one of these financial companies recently, and I asked him how he's enjoying his first year of his job, and he said, "Well, they're pushing AI everywhere, and it's great. However, I gave advice to my MD the other day that, you know what, for the first 2 months on the job, 3 months, don't ask them to use AI. Ask them to learn the business, work with more senior people, get the contacts. Because how do you know the answers are right? How do you know that, you're overly relying on AI to give you the answer versus your own judgment or your own creativity? And he was right. He's like, if you throw everybody into AI right out of the gate who don't know the business or don't have the context, how are they going to really have really good judgment later? And when you're talking to those more senior leaders who've lived it, they can give it to you. And then the combination of the two is just so powerful.
It is powerful. This idea of companionship, is it related to something that you have worked with in the continuous learning cycle area? I think that it was with Pagaya. Is it something related? Tell me more about that because I'm super interested about how we can
Yes.
change this traditional model of learning stuff.
Yeah, so I joined Pagaya as the first C-suite when the company was relatively small and pre-IPO. And everybody comes to it saying, okay, we started to get critical mass in our employee base. Everyone's like, well, we need reviews. And my first question is why? Why do we need reviews? What do reviews do? What are you expecting this to be? Is this just to get an output for compensation or a promotion? Okay, there are opportunities for that. But what do we really want to do? And at the core, Pagaya was a learning organization. We were an AI model that was helping to do better in the underwriting space and learning through it and giving better decision making to our partners so they can get more customers. So why shouldn't we as a company think about that for ourselves? How we get better at it. And so why would we start with, let's just do a performance review and everybody just gets their questions and a rating and there you go, off we go. So instead we flipped the equation and we said, let's just have managers and employees meet and have a conversation, but we're going to help them with the structure of it. And the structure is going to be all about learning. And we're going to ask 4 key questions. And the first one is, over the last 3 to 6 months, where have you been successful and where have you failed? Okay. Then what have you learned from those things, both good and bad? And then what are your goals for the next 3 to 6 months for the company? And what support we as management and the company can help you be successful in that? And an employee would just fill that out. Took 1 week. We had 100% of employees do it. Managers at the same time will do a reflection on those questions for you. And then you bring those 2 things together and have a conversation. And that conversation yielded a great kind of, you know, it was better than a review because you're sitting here with no rating, so you don't feel like you're being judged. And you're open to the conversation because it's about how we are going to be more successful for Pagaya. And then this turned into more of a, let's really start to have more postmortems on things. We started doing this not only individually, but we called it the CLC, continuous learning cycle. And then people would do CLCs as teams. Why did we work well together? Why didn't we work together? What were our goals for the next 3 to 6 months? How can we help each other be successful? And it got into this ingrained mindset that learning's at the core. And you both need to learn what you did well and why, so you can replicate it, and what you didn't do so well and how you can actually fix it or modify it, or where you can get leverage from other people who actually could do it well.
It is a better way to get rid of this cancer in organization where people spend time inventing stuff, inventing my achievements because I'm being judged. Of course, I'm going to lie or tweak a little bit the reality,
Really?
and my boss is not going to know exactly because he doesn't know that I collaborated with XYZ, whatever. So it's going to
People
get
game
rid
it.
of shit. Yeah.
They game it. And it's because it's all about whether or not you're going to get promoted, you're going to get more money or you're going to get let go. I mean, one of my companies, I remember it was like they would do the review and right after you'd find out your compensation and you're sitting there saying to yourself, I'm not listening to the review. I just want to know what the number is, right? And that's that you lose the whole value of like how are you doing. And if you and then people will say to me, oh, but you still need to do something to help with compensation and performance and then how you're thinking about promotion. I get that. Those can be different processes. They don't need to be embedded together. And what you learn from doing these separately is that you're creating a culture where employees are going to share where they made mistakes and where they succeeded, and that you're going to value more the ability for someone to learn over produce in that moment, because if they're learning, they're going to produce better over time.
Mm. I've seen even worse. I remember that there was a process called calibration.
Gosh,
Calibration was
don't get me
done
started on calibration.
before the conversation one to one, and the people sometimes knew already the rating before the discussion, but they had to suffer to have the pain.
And the worst
And
part is, you know how much time companies waste on calibrations? This process I'm talking about that we did took 4 weeks. 4 weeks. And the output greater. I was at a company where they spent 9 months on performance reviews, 2 sessions twice a year, plus calibrations. And they still believed that they were paying their highest performers more and that they were feeling more successful. Well, the answer was the highest performers felt not as happy and only on average got maybe 5K more in bonus. And this was all because we spent so much time being so mathematical about it and trying to make, the force rankings and all this stuff. That doesn't make performance better. That's
mm,
covering your butt
mm, indeed,
or helping you to feel justified in why you're promoting somebody or giving somebody more money. But that doesn't yield a better organization. And in the world of AI, you have to be having learning agility and teaching that. And failures are good. They teach you to be better in the future.
I'm pretty sure that in this audience there is many HR people who are wondering, oh, today, okay, what is done is done. I have been living this life of boredom, doing administration, doing a lot of things. I need to change. This needs to change. How can people become a, a more strategic business partner? Partner, what would be the little action? I'm a fan of these habits or these small little actions that I can start tomorrow to become that strategic business partner or this superhuman company leader.
Well, first you have to kill the performance review.
I love it. Thank you, Tami.
Um, and stop trying to think about the solutions in programs and initiatives and start thinking about it in how does this integrate with how the business is working and where can you help enable the business to move faster and create those moments. I think a lot of times we as leaders, when we see a problem, have to have a tangible solution instantly, but we don't look at what are we taking off the plate in order to add that in there. And then you have two things that you're doing and three things, and that adds more time to your earlier point of you get mired in all this administrative work because we're creating stuff all the time to solve the problem of the moment, not the solution for the future. And I think if HR leaders took a step back and said, okay, what are all the things we're doing? Does this still work? If it does, keep it. If it doesn't, let's move on and close it out and start something else, or not do something else and give people more time to apprentice, or give people more time to learn from each other. So I think as leaders as HR, we have to look at a bigger picture. And the one thing they can do is start thinking about what they can kill, like a performance review that is not helping grow or develop people or make people better at their work because they're always backward looking, not forward looking, and start thinking about things that really will complement their employees and their organizations as they really move into this more AI revolution.
Hmm. There is still something that stays in my throat thinking about human resources is that there is this belief that if you take the most known technical solution, like I remember back in the days, it was SAP that was the tool that everybody wanted to implement. And then there was some other things that came, Oracle, or whatsoever, that they believe that they trust more the brand than the real depth of the solution that it's brought to the table. And now with AI, it is so easy to develop your own tools,
Yeah.
find new alternative ways. How do we break this vicious circle where because it's difficult to get rid of what we have been doing forever? I will buy this new module of SAP HANA or whatsoever in order to solve my talent review process. And we are not reviewing the processes. We are continuing because we have invested couple of millions already in adapting this tool. How do we get rid of this thinking that we need this tool, uh, we need this consultant in from human resources to do our calibration or for leadership? Or how do we get rid of this thing that is polluting human resources?
Well, I have to say it's a big challenge, and I think it's going to get a little harder, not easier in this new age because everybody's trying to sell us the new solution that they created to help you be more successful. And the irony is HR's always had the lowest budget. They've always been sort of the shoemaker's children when it came to technology enablement. And I hope that's going to change. But at the same time, HR leaders, think about this. Don't just take the next solution because it looks fancy or it looks like it's going to solve that momentarily problem. You have to look at the whole ecosystem and the roadmap and everything from the life cycle of an employee and really think about how that's going to enable the business to be successful at every piece of it and where you need to build versus buy. And some of the stuff you might want to build and co-create with the business, not decide what the business wants. And then the other side is what can I buy that'll make it go faster for me that solves the problem I have for the long run? Because what you don't want to do is in 3 more months can that project and start another one. And I like to call myself a business leader where I see people as my product. And I think HR leaders need to kind of shift that mindset even more because you're taking the people to enable the business to be successful. That's why people strategy is your business strategy. So start thinking about how the different technology solutions or the different programs you're putting together fit into that so that you are having your own product roadmap for people.
Hmm. I have another interesting question. So let's imagine that you get back and you get the famous magic wand again.
I got another magic wand.
And you have to decide, how do we develop and promote the future HR leaders? What would you do? What are the actions that you would put in place?
Well, I mean, I'll be provocative. I think every HR leader should then be the CEO of the company. And partly because HR leaders are the only other role aside from the CEO that has to know every aspect of the business. and every aspect of the company, and everything from the operations all the way to the strategic, to the mission all the way to the vision, and then have to translate it. So my magic wand for those leaders would be, you know, you have to step up to the charge. Don't sit back and wait for someone to ask you the questions. Offer the solutions. Be in the conversation. Be the leader around the table because you're a part of the executive team, not because you're the HR leader and you just happen to have expertise in people. And if you operate in that way, you're going to see a very different dialogue with your executive team and how you're doing it. Thinking about when you do want to roll out something with regard to wellness, that you're thinking about what was the business case for it. Was the business case so that you're just giving everybody some sort of benefit that every other company has? Or is this benefit enabling people to be more productive, less time out of the office, more happy, more successful? Think about that and then put that into numbers. Are you seeing less absenteeism? So that's why you're doing it. Are you seeing your prescription drugs usage and cost to the company going down? Things like that help you to have a better discussion and be more thoughtful about how people is the product and the business is being driven by these decisions that you're making.
Hmm. You made me think about these wellness platforms that have been sold since COVID. And the funny thing is that after COVID, people started measuring how many users, what was the percentage of the people who were actually using the tool that caused the bomb. And it was not so much because we forgot a little bit about this human psychology that you cannot just give everything what they want because if there is too much choice, we don't take anything. And sometimes giving just enough of something that would be useful for us not as an employee, but as a human being, I'm going to be so grateful that somebody thought
Exactly.
about that.
Well, and I think that's where, like, right now, the way we do benefits and how we think about it, we still decide what employees want and need. And I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think there should be a menu of things, and employees will select where they want to spend their dollars and where they want to put their time and their money on things, because not everybody uses all those things. And then we're coming out as an HR leader. Look at what we're giving you. We're giving you this wellness platform, and 1% use it. Now, the great part is that 1% gets great value out of it and it's important to them. But maybe that 1% doesn't want something else. So you don't
Mm,
have to spend all the money on everything. You can give much more of a menu approach, which allows people to select what they need when they need it.
mm. Tell me, what is the best way to reach you out? Because I think that there is a lot of value on what we have discussed today because we have spin it to how we can drive this human resources who is currently in pain, suffering. I have heard so many people in human resources complaining, some of them even crying because it is awful sometimes to be in the shoes of human resources because they are blamed for everything that the leaders do not understand about humans. And that's bad.
And
How
and
can
then
you
some.
yeah, yeah, that's true. How can people reach you out, Tammy, to ask you questions? Because I think that people can be
Well, definitely go to my LinkedIn. And on my LinkedIn, my contacts are all there, and happy to talk to any of your listeners and help them as they think about these issues and problems that are arising. But I do want to mention that we as HR leaders need to really understand that people is our product, and every business problem eventually becomes a people problem at scale. And in order for us to really be successful, we really need to be all things, meaning very commercially minded and then also very people minded.
absolutely, absolutely. Last question. Yeah, the book, more or less. More or less. I'm curious. And I want people to know that this book is coming. Superhuman Companies.
Yes, it is coming. I'm in the process of looking for a publisher now. So if you're out there and you're a publisher, please give me a call. I'm happy to send my proposal. I'm working through an agent named Stephen Harris, and it hopefully will be coming out early next year.
That would be amazing. Looking forward to reading it, Dami. Thank you very much for the time you
Thank you
spent with
so
us.
much.
It was really lovely.
Yes, it was great meeting you. I really appreciate the time, and I hope your listeners felt like they got a lot out of it.
Thanks.